Hello, everyone, and welcome to today's CX Connect, brought to you by CRM, Smart Customer Service, and by our Diamond Keynote sponsor, CSG. I'm Bob Fernikes, and I'm the publisher for CRM Magazine, and I'm the moderator for this week's webcast. I'm sure many of you have attended one of our many webcasts over the past 25 years, but we've added something a little different this morning that we think you're really going to like. At the end of the formal webcast, as it concludes, we're going to bring on Brent Leary and Paul Greenberg, our chairs of CRM evolution for many years, and have a backstage chat with our speaker, Mark Smith from CSG. Paul and Brent will be jumping into their CRM players roles, as this post chat should be fun and engaging. So we hope you stick around and ask whatever questions you have to help direct the conversation. But first, we're going to view this brief video from CSG, and then we'll jump back and introduce our speaker in today's presentation. So let's roll the video.
Timid does not shift paradigms. Safe does not drop jaws. Status quo has never created the best next experience. Following convention is only ever good enough for good enough. To be exceptional, you need an exception. CSG Exponent is how you break the rules of customer engagement. See the future. Be everywhere at once. Know the answers before you ever get the questions. Break down walls. Challenge the system. Change the world on behalf of your customers. You'll do whatever it takes to win their loyalty. It's time you had a tool that was willing to do the same. An infinity of customer engagement in a single, unified platform. It's an exception. It's your X factor. It's Exponent from CSG.
Okay, welcome back. So now I'm going to introduce today's Diamond Keynote sponsor. The name of today's presentation is Aligning Employees and Customers for Best-in-Class Total Experience. But before I begin, I just want to explain how you can participate in this live broadcast. At the end of the event, we will have a question and answer session. So if you have a question during the presentation, just type it into the Q&A tab, not the chat tab, the Q&A tab, so we can find them easily. As I mentioned before the video, we will have an extra backstage chat after the formal presentation with Brent and Paul, so please stay tuned. It's going to be great. And just for fun, you could win this $50 Amazon gift card if you stick around to the end. So you must be present to win. Now to introduce our speaker for today, we've got Mark Smith, VP of Digital Engagement Solutions at CSG. Welcome to the broadcast, Mark.
Thanks very much, Bob. Really pleased to be here. A real pleasure. Great to be at CX Connect, and great to see so many people here in the audience. So I will just dive right in, Bob. I think we're ready to go.
Absolutely. Yep. Take it away.
So I'm welcome along. Fantastic. The CSG is a sponsor of the event today. I'm going to talk about experience and how improving experiences for customers and employees. A new domain called total experience can radically change the performance of your business. Improve the satisfaction of your employees and your customers, and drive your business performance to new levels. So the agenda for today, I'm going to just sort of set the scene in terms of what is customer experience, what is employee experience, and how they connect into total experience. I'm then going to talk a little bit about journeys. I've been working in the journey space for almost 10 years now, and it's really journey thinking that brings these experiences to life. And I'm going to kind of talk through what we mean by that at CSG, and the kind of journeys that we deliver for a set of our clients, and some real world case studies that I'm going to go through. And probably half the presentation today We'll be focused on those very real case studies from some of our clients, world-leading brands, so that it's an opportunity to share how they've made a real difference by focusing on journeys as a way to deliver great experiences. And then we'll go into Q&A. And as Bob says, that Q&A is going to have a couple of special guest choreographers to join in, and hopefully everyone will be able to stay around for the Q&A period. So that's the agenda we're going to go through today. So I'm going to kick it off just by talking about what we at CSG see kind of happening in the marketplace today. And there's a real battle going on for what is the number one theme for the boardroom right now. We're all, and I'm sure the audience today, you've probably attended many events like this, and you're very familiar with the focus on CX, the focus on customer experience. And that's been one of the top 2 or 3 board level themes for the last couple of years, at least. The marketplace for all of us has really been disrupted by a small number of leading brands that do a fantastic job servicing their customers. And so these unique kind of 1% of organizations that connect everything together, make it super easy, make it super convenient, understand you as customers, understand us as customers, and give us exactly what we're looking for. They've been doing a fantastic job and setting an incredibly high bar of expectation for everyone else. And it's really hard for everyone else, particularly businesses that are, been around for a few years and have built up based on a whole set of technologies that they've used for many years now to run their business. It's very hard to pivot and keep up with these essentially totally digitally based brands that have set this new expectation. And so we all find ourselves competing with these guys, competing with the Amazon and the Ubers of the world for what makes a great experience and how convenient doing business with a company is supposed to be. These guys have set a bar that's really hard to keep up with. And experience has become the real decision point for so many customers about where they shop, where they get their services, who they do business with. And so it's become this board level issue to say, well, we've got to improve it. We've got to do whatever we can to improve the experience of our customers. Now, what's really interesting is how a new theme has emerged this year, literally just this year. It's suddenly, for many of our customers and many of the people I speak to, it's actually overtaken CX, and that's employee experience. And that's suddenly, if there's one issue being talked about in a boardroom right now, across all of North America, Europe, and many other places in the world, it's how can we help our employees? How can we keep our employees? And how do we survive with less employees? Because that is the Great Resignation has suddenly put so many businesses on the back foot. And so, if your board is not talking about employee experience, maybe they're talking about sustainability, the other sort of huge theme that's going right across all industries today. But they will be talking about how to improve employee experience. And the great news is that the same tools we've all been working on for the last 2 years to improve customer experience can actually be deployed to help the employee. Because one big way to help our employees is to help them help the customer, because that gives them job satisfaction. It means they're dealing with happy customers. That helps them. But it also, by giving them the intelligence to work with, the same intelligence that we use to allow customers to digitally self-serve, and is the intelligence we use to decide what we say to customers, we can give that same intelligence to our employees. It makes them smarter. It makes them way more efficient, and allows them to do a better job. That's going to make them happier. That's going to make them stick around. But it's not just making them stick around. The problem for so many organizations is we've already lost a set of employees. And so what's interesting, we are finding so many companies who over the last couple of years, we've talked to them about opportunities to save on operational costs and the potential to reduce 20, 30% out of operating costs. And they thought about it. They're now coming back to us and saying, well, you know, that 20% saving that was possible? Well, we actually have got 20% less people now. Or we've got a 50% increase in our business and we've still got the same number of people. So now we're interested. Now we'd like to learn more because it feels like we absolutely have to do something because we just don't have the people to do the job. So we've got to make them more intelligent. We've got to make them more efficient. And so we see these two themes really battling for kind of top spot at the moment. But the good news is they're highly connected. And I want to share a little bit of research from the folks over at Gartner Group who in the last year or so have started talking about a theme of total experience. And for them, total experience is the bringing together of those top two that I've just been talking about, the customer experience and the employee experience. But they add into that user experience. So, you know, the design side of making sure that the tools you give customers are doing the right thing and are easy to use, but also an interesting concept of multi-experience. And that may be, for a lot of people I talk to, that's a relatively new term. And what Gartner mean by multi-experience is essentially what might have been called by some people in the past, it's kind of similar to the omni-channel word, but it's just a little bit different. The idea of multi-experience is setting up your organization to be ready for the customer on any channel, but to ensure that the experience you decide to give them, the best possible experience, is going to be delivered consistently on any channel that the customer happens to choose. And so it's this new approach of essentially setting yourselves up with an intelligence engine that will guarantee that regardless of where the customer chooses to go, regardless of which channel the customer uses, you're ready to give them the right experience. And it's delivered in a very, very consistent and intelligent manner. And so Gartner talk about total experience as the coming together of all these four experiences. And that's the new approach that's going to ensure your brand really gets it right when it comes to every interaction with your customer. Now, what we see at CSG is all of these things actually tie back to the idea of a journey. Because if you think about it, that idea that the customer can use any channel and you're always going to be ready for them ties directly into the delivery of a journey. Because all of our customer interactions, or the vast majority for the vast majority of brands, are actually a series of interactions that take place over time. We want a long-term relationship with our customers that covers all sorts of aspects of working with that customer and serving that customer and growing that customer. And that is an ongoing process that is a journey that needs to touch or is bound to touch different channels, usually at the whim of the customer, more than in your total control. And so total experience really is, in our thinking, directly aligned with this concept of a journey, that you need to track the customer through everything that they are doing and give them the right things at the right moment. And the real experience they feel is the sum of all those touches, all those moments of truth, which sometimes they get for themselves on a self-serve channel, but often they get by dealing with and working with your employees on a served channel. And all of those things add up to the overall experience for the customer, and they all add up to what the customer thinks about your brand and whether they come back and whether they stick with this journey or they take their journey somewhere else and they take their journey off and deal with another business that does a better job of tracking them, knowing them, and helping them. And so, you know, one of the big problems in some aspects of the CX world, where if CX to you is voice of customer and is about collecting feedback from the customer, and that defines things, And you don't think about it in terms of this full journey, and you don't think about it in terms of what we would call the voice of the process, what's the customer actually doing at the time that they say and give you that feedback. And you don't link in the voice of the employee. What does the employee say the customer's doing? What does the employee record as the action? It's that triangle of voice of process, voice of customer, voice of employee. That's what really gives you the full feel for what's happening with the customer. And so you need to move on from just touch point based measurements and think about measurements of the overall journey. And that will help you move into this world of total experience. And so to give a little bit more detail, what we think of when we talk about journeys is there's a big master journey that is the whole life cycle of your engagement with a customer. And of course, this happens, you've got lots of data. Every organization's got lots of data about customers. You've now got lots of channels, probably ever increasing number of ways that you can communicate with customers. But the customers on this journey that goes in a cycle, they show some interest in your brand, and you maybe manage to sell a first product to them. But then you enter this cycle of servicing them, of helping them, of answering their questions. And if you give them great support, the right moment will come for you to be able to sell them a new product and grow your relationship with them. Hopefully you won't get to a point where they're thinking of leaving, but you can keep them on this loop. If they ever do think of leaving, you want to put in place some retention activity. But if you do that right, you will keep that customer on an ongoing cycle around your business, constantly growing, constantly serving them, and keeping them as a customer, making money. And key thing there is, if they're having a good experience and they're finding this process easy, they'll stay and they'll be happy. And so the marketing part of the journey is often a small onboarding piece to then this ongoing service journey. And what should sit in the heart of that, linking to all the different data you have in your business, linking to all your different channels, is an orchestration engine that runs the journeys, that is intelligently tracking everything that's happening. And ultimately, it can control this kind of master life cycle journey. But around the cycle, there's lots of point journeys that solve particular problems. Maybe it's a retention, a save problem. Maybe it's a customer service. Maybe it's onboarding. Maybe it's the upselling. Each of those are typically a journey in their own right. And so you as a business need to start thinking about running multiple journeys. You're going to end up with a whole library of these journeys that touch different channels, and each of them will touch multiple channels. And in some sense, they then connect. Your customers will sit on multiple journeys, sometimes multiple journeys at the same time. And one of the key things that businesses get wrong and leads to an unhappy customer is when there's a clash between those different journeys. You've got a customer on a complaint journey or a problem-solving journey because they've had a real bad issue with a product or a service. That's the perfect time to take them out of the marketing journey and stop trying to upsell and make sure you fix their problem, and save that next journey until the problem's gone away. And that kind of intelligence and the interplay, moving customers between journeys, that's the way to get really great results out of a journey approach. And so we at CSG, we think about two primary types of journey that I'd kind of like to share with you all today. The first of those is the proactive journey. And this is usually focused directly at the customer, where we are using intelligence gathered from all of the data in your business to be listening to what the customer's up to, aligning that with a plan of what makes a great experience, predicting what the customer's actually interested in, and then kind of encourage them and helping them along that journey, but being one step ahead, knowing what's next, knowing where they need to go, and kind of nudging them along, nudging them through that experience, being ready for them as they land on the website, being ready to with the right information to help them along their journey. And if you get these kind of proactive journeys right, if you get one step ahead of the game and predict what the customer's interested in and be there for them, not only does that deliver great results and value and therefore make the customer happy and make them buy more, but it actually can have a significant impact on your operational costs because you've predicted ahead. It saves the customer having to do things for themselves and saves the customer calling you and using your resources and taking up your time, because it's become a self-serve thing because you've led them to that point. And so we think about these proactive journeys as a guide to help the customer get through a certain process, get to an end point that is a satisfactory resolution of a problem, or perhaps the purchase of a new product. Now, because it doesn't always happen that way. Anybody who's really in the customer journey space will tell you that one of the most important factors of a customer journey is it belongs to the customer, and the customer's going to do their thing, right? Every business needs to have a plan of what an ideal experience is and what the right kind of journey is. And you have to have a plan to execute and to try and guide the customer down, but they're bound to do something else. Certainly some of them are. And so you also need to think about journeys that are reactive, when the customer just does not what you expected or not what you wanted, but came in on a different channel. And at that point, you need to be reactive and ready for that customer. And so this is a little bit of the multi-experience things that Gartner talks about, and react in the right way to that customer. And oftentimes this is where the employee comes into the mix, providing your staff, your customer support, your customer service, your telesales staff with the same intelligence that was being used over there on the proactive journey, directly into their tools, onto their screen, to say, hey, this is Mark Smith, and we were trying to guide him down this journey, and this is really the next step he needs to take, but he's just calling real time now. Please guide him to this next step of the journey. Providing that intelligence to your teams will allow them to progress Mark Smith or any other customer down that correct journey, and allowing your staff, your customer service agents, to know the customer better and to understand the context of that customer and what activities they've got going on, so that they can really use the intelligence that you've got inside the business already to offer the right thing and do the right thing, will make a super happy customer. It'll make your employees much happier in their job. It's also going to make them much more efficient because they go to the right thing first. And so that intersection of the proactive customer journeys and the reactive employee journeys is a huge win-win opportunity. It's actually a win-win-win opportunity we often talk about, because getting these things right can increase the satisfaction of the customer. That gets your business results better in terms of improved sales, improved retention rates, but it actually all can be done at the same time as reducing your operating costs, because you've been able to select the right channels and you've been able to move the right customers to digital channels. And so there's a real win-win potential here. And I think that's the real delivery of great customer experience for businesses today, is to get this kind of a win-win. Because if you get the customer experience right, you should be saving money at the same time as making money. And so I want to give a few examples of where we've done exactly this for a set of our customers. So the first one is a huge global technology company, one of the largest in the world, who has a set of customer support, customer service and sales call centers on a global basis. And they take a lot of phone calls from customers. And they, despite lots of use of technology, they have a big problem in a lot of the calls that come in get misrouted. So we have, and we all know that sometimes this is at the hands of the customer themselves, but we have customer support calls going to the sales team, and we have sales calls going to the customer support team, essentially. There's a whole set more complexity to the mix there. But when 60% of your calls, despite the use of intelligent IVR systems, are kind of going the wrong way, that becomes a very inefficient operation. And so what we were able to do was insert a voice and text-based learning system, an AI, essentially an AI approach that can listen to the customer and make a prediction of the real intent and the real goal for that customer. And by doing that, obviously, we can reroute those calls to the right place first time. And this has, an immediate huge benefit to the organization. You can imagine, 35% drop in misrouted calls will lead to a huge improvement in the handle time for individual calls, because it goes to the right place, the right time, and the right agent has got it first off, and just reduces the friction that is felt with the customer. And obviously, it also improves the first call resolution rate hugely, because we're not having to pass this customer around. And so it's an example of the smart use of AI, multi-language system that can, essentially listen to the customer, identify where they are on their journey, because we know who they are and we tag them, and then get them through to the right place. Now, the key to this, and the key to, I guess, our success with this client was we were able to prove this in a pretty short time frame. And it's kind of standard to the CSG approach is to be up and running in 90 days. And the way we're able to do that is that we're actually agnostic to the systems that are sitting there running the business. We plug our intelligence engines and our AI engines into those existing systems. So there's no rip and replace of that existing technology. We plug into it and empower it to do a better job. And that's the key, going right back to the start of the presentation when I talked about those leading brands and the fantastic job they do of delivering great experiences, and how for the rest of us, for the 99% of the world, with real investments in lots of different existing technology, it's hard to do. But the way to do it is to plug in an intelligence engine that's independent of all of those systems, that can link between them, that journey orchestration engine I showed on the previous diagram, that can plug into them and get more intelligence and get journeys running to deliver great experiences in your existing systems. And so up and running in 12 weeks, halving the handling time, doubling the first call resolution rate, huge results for a global brand like this. So that's in the sort of retail technology space. Looking at a very different industry, we did some amazing kind of pioneering work with one of the largest utilities companies in America. So big North American power company was going through, like many organizations, going through a big digital transformation initiative. So, driven by a desire to primarily reduce cost, that digital transformation initiative was building new websites, building new digital tools, new apps to engage with the customer and try and reduce the load on the service channel. And what I've always found funny is that many of those digital transformation initiatives were started on this cost saving basis, and only later did they kind of click onto the fact that this was also a customer experience initiative, and that delivering a better experience was actually going to be a result, and a positive result from the transformation. And so the kinds of things we helped this company with, they had a big initiative around customer retention. So, typically at the end of a contract, the end of a promotion period, they, got to work hard to keep the customer. And like many organizations, done a lot of great work over the years in their analytics team, building a real understanding of which customers were most at risk of attrition, building models to predict the likely attrition of customers, real understanding of typical kind of trigger points that lead up to the loss of a customer. But a lot of that analytics had been built and serves the customer care agents. And in fact, in their call center, they had a safety that sits in the call center and are specialists at saving the customer. They're tooled up with specialized offers, and they're given guidance on which customers qualify and how to make those special offers to retain the customer. The thing that frustrated the president of the company one time I met with him was that they just spent millions and millions of dollars moving the organization digital. And so all of a sudden, the customers were self-serving. Customers are on the website, happily disconnecting without anybody trying to save them. And so it was actually a kind of mismatch of the digital transformation initiative had led to the customers escaping without being talked to by the safe team. And so a huge initiative that we helped with was to get that save team turned digital, essentially. And so the same intelligence that predicts which customers are at risk and predicts the typical triggers was plugged in to run real time on the digital tools, so that seeing a customer arrive, if that was a high scoring, high potential risk customer arriving on the website, that's a time to present some real time content to them around an offer to stay. If they seem to ignore it, the next step of the journey is, well, let's try and get someone to interact with them, and we pop up a chat agent to live interact and talk to the customer, and obviously not say, we think you're about to leave, but say, hey, Mr. Smith, do you know we've got some really great offers on at the moment for an extension on your contract? We can give you a great new rate. Would you be interested? And that chat agent can capture that customer in real time at the point that they're interacting on a new channel. Now, of course, it doesn't always work. And sometimes that chat agent is able to transfer the customer to talk to somebody in the sales team, or the save team. But also, it could be that none of that digital engagement works. What our journey would next do is perhaps send an email to follow up, or a text message to follow up, and try and re-engage with that customer. And those things can also be driven as an outbound activity, even if they haven't visited the website, just because they score highly and they're coming up to a renewal point. And ultimately, for the really high value customer, maybe you want to make an outbound phone call and talk to them. But the key thing was, at the point that those things don't have traction live, but then the customer calls through, the key thing is to make that connection. And so when that customer does arrive on a phone call and talk to one of the service team members, they are at that point engaged with by an intelligent agent who's a real person, but is fed with the information that comes from those past interactions. And the offer that was made on the website can get repeated, because you've got an independent engine feeding both and making sure it's consistent. So customer sees real consistency in the offer, and it backs up what they saw in the email. It backs up what they've seen in a text message. It backs up what they saw when they went to the website. Getting all of that right is getting the journey right, and getting the journey right for the customer will make them happier. And we saw very significant rises in this company's NPS. We saw huge success, in 98% success in terms of the online engagement with those target customers to save them. And great success story and a great example of how the live call center channel can be working in parallel to the digital channels, and by working in synchrony, get tremendous results for the organization. So that's a utilities power example. I want to go on and talk a little bit about another different industry, financial services. So long time client of mine, had quite a few years ago now, the pioneering idea of doing inbound marketing in their call center. So the folks we were working with were totally call center centric. It was a big new initiative in the bank to build a phone sales and service operation, in particular in their wealth management and retirement services initially. And the folks we were talking to were running the marketing department, and they put a huge amount of effort into marketing intelligence to drive outbound calling campaigns to target certain new offers and certain new products to particular customers. And you can imagine the kind of thing that certain agents sat on a team and were given call lists to reach out and make new product offers to existing clients. Now, a bright spark running that marketing team realized that the funny thing was, most of the interactions that took place in the call center were inbound calls, not outbound calls. And on those inbound calls, they actually didn't do anything particularly special. They were, of course, customer-led. Why are you calling, Mr. Smith? What are you interested in? How can I help you? Is obviously the first point of call. But then all this intelligence that had been worked out for marketing wasn't being used on those inbound calls. And in fact, those inbound calls were measured on a different basis. They were measured on call length and completion times and all those kind of standard metrics. And they changed the game. They changed the game by making that marketing intelligence available on inbound calls and enabling their teams to offer the right product to the customer in the right situation, and turn the inbound calls into sales opportunities. It was a massive success. But the funny thing about it is, it didn't really seem to be a success in the first instance, and that's why I think it makes a really kind of educational case study. So what the system provides is, during every call, as the customer is identified, a set of the top 2 or 3 potential offers for that customer are provided to the agent, along with a little tag that kind of gives a reason why. So there's some context, and these are financial products, so it's a somewhat sophisticated discussion, and so reasons why were a real help. But then also a set of feedback buttons in the interface to record, did the call actually go in the right direction and an offer was made? Did we get any sign of interest? Did we get a purchase? So lots of data being tracked. And when the system went live, it first went out targeted at a small group of expert agents. Just, as your typical kind of pilot, let's put it in the hands of the best people, because it's a sophisticated new tool. Don't want to confuse any of the team. So we'll put it in the hands of the best agents. And they came back and said, yeah, it worked okay, but to be honest, it was nothing special. It was kind of suggesting the things we would have done anyway. It was, it all made sense. It was the kind of things we would have offered if we'd got to that point and had that conversation with the customer. And what was funny was some of the folks in the organization felt that this, maybe this showed it wasn't kind of valuable. But the guy who led the initiative made a incredibly powerful point, which was, this is good, right? The fact that this is what our very best customer service people would have done shows that this is working. We want this to work for everybody. can we now put this in the hands of like the whole of our team and get them all doing the things that the very best people would have thought of and would have done? And of course, that delivered huge success, tripled the sales success rates in the team, fantastically successful project, which led to, you know, an expansion of the business into multiple lines through the bank, multiple product areas. Ultimately, a couple of years later, led to it going live across thousands of branches for delivery through the branch staff as well, getting these same kind of recommendations. And maybe the best bit of the story is the chap that I worked with on this, who, when we started this whole thing, was in a cube in the call center. A few years later, once this rollout had all happened, was in a corner office in the World Trade Center, or the buildings next to the old World Trade Center. So he had a fantastic kind of career built on these kind of successes. And the funny thing is, it comes back to exactly what I was talking about at the start. This connection of the intelligence we build into interactions with the customer, linking those across to having that same intelligence guide our employees to do a better job, help our people, help the customer. Is a great route to a lot of value delivered back to your business. So those are our three case studies. I want to just kind of finish up with a couple of summary slides, and then we'll go into a Q&A. So, you know, the key thing that's happening in this market today, and I'm sure many of you on attending the conference will be very aware of that. You know, getting to the next level of success is not just a matter of scaling. There's a lot of complexity here. It's all about getting smarter. And there's you know, you don't have to go from 0 to 200 miles an hour overnight. There's a set of steps you can do. You don't have to go from no journeys to a full lifetime library of 20 different journeys for your customers. Everybody starts with one journey. One particular use case is going to deliver real value to your business, and start stepping up in sophistication. Don't think about ripping and replacing. You know, the value comes from adding intelligence. Every large business has lots of systems of record and data systems, lots of systems of communication. The key is to have an intelligence engine in the middle that's independent, that can work with all of them. And it avoids very, very costly rip and replace big IT projects, and allows you to deliver journey projects that deliver great experience to customers. And so, you know, a bit of a guide to how to get success. If this stuff sounds interesting, if some of those case studies have sparked an interest out there in the audience today, think about what you'd want your use cases to be. What are the things that are really going to deliver value to your business? Is it improving the service you offer? Is it improving upsell and cross-sell and growth in the customer base? Is it improving onboarding for new customers? Is it improving retention? Lots of different use cases can be solved with this approach. And the key is to start with one, have a vision around how to deliver real value around that use case, and then start to think about, well, okay, how do we support it? What do we need on the data and analytics front to feed into getting this journey right? And we have a whole process, a whole best practice process that we'd love to talk about with you to guide you and your organization through these different steps. And so, in summary, you know, pulling it all together, I would ask you to think about, as we get to the end of the presentation here, think about journeys and think about how, for your customers and your employees, the real interactions that go on between them are a journey. They go on through time. There's multiple touches through time and across different channels. And getting control of that is key for you to really get to the next level of value for the business. Take a look at the data and tech you've got, and how that data, you will have lots of data available already in your business. It's all about connecting it and using it. Start with the one thing, start with a use case, get some early success, get that delivered in 90 days so that you can kind of prove that this stuff really does work at, minimal investment. And that will start the ball rolling around a business case. You've got to choose the right metrics so that you can really measure the value that's being delivered. And those metrics need to be about journeys. They're not about touch points. Every organization has got, first call resolution rates, handling time rates, agent analytics, website analytics, email analytics. The key is that you start measuring journeys, measuring how all those things connect and really get to the true endpoint for the customer and build metrics around that. And empower your employees to help the customer, help themselves, and get to these kind of results. So pretty much, Bob, I think on time here. I'd like to thank everyone for your attention. Hope you enjoyed the presentation. Hope you enjoyed the case studies, but leaving plenty of time for some Q&A. I'd love to get some questions.
Hey, great. You covered so much excellent information there, Mark. I mean, one thing that really jumps out at me from your presentation is, all the case studies, the use cases, and, especially the proof points. I mean, that was pretty remarkable right there. It's been said, not by me, but by somebody much smarter, that, businessmen are only interested in two questions. How do I make money and how do I save money? If you can sell 15% more and reduce costs by 30%, that's a pretty good case study right now. I'm going to have you jump back just into the last 2 years, because we're at such a unique period of time, especially for a company like yours. I mean, I'm sure you've seen the E&Y study that came out, maybe 6 months into the pandemic, and they said that, 5 years of digital transformation had been completed in the first, 5 or 6 months of the pandemic. I mean, how, obviously the numbers are there. How do you account for the fact that, a lot of people were sitting on the fence and they pulled the trigger on the digital transformation and all the things that you're talking about right now? But where do you see things coming from the people that were a little bit of a laggard or weren't able to pull the trigger for some reason?
Yeah, well, many of them have gone out of business, Bob, at the end of the day. That's the sad truth is that, we saw a huge difference. The folks that were already underway really benefited when the pandemic hit, because they were able to move much faster to switch to more digital channels and go wholly digital in for so many aspects of the business. We absolutely saw, folks, we got a very large insurance client that we started working with them 3-4 years ago, and they were on a 4-year DT initiative that suddenly became a 1-year DT initiative, right, when the pandemic hit. Now, fortunately, they were already underway and they were able to accelerate. There was one of those great marketunist cartoons of the boardroom sitting there saying, "Oh, we can leave digital transformation for another year," and the wrecking ball of COVID was kind of smashing in through the wall, because those who had not started, it was so hard to suddenly spring into gear and do that. So sadly, I think a lot of businesses that weren't already on the ball really suffered and probably went out of business. But the ones that jumped in, the thing is, the benefit is multiplying, because and I'm not the brilliant guy that thought of this. I'm sure everybody's heard this many times, probably at this conference. But the new world is here to stay. even though thankfully COVID's regressing, this new world is here to stay, and people like it so well. So many customers like the new approach, that those who really invested heavily in it are now kind of doubly benefiting, because the customers are sticking with it. And we actually saw this. It's funny that the power company, utility company I talked about in one of the case studies, we were working with them when COVID hit. It essentially took out several of their call center centers, and huge, took 90% of their call center capacity away. And so we got a lot of love from them as we sprung into action and basically accelerated a whole set of stuff on their digital channels, because suddenly none of the calls were getting answered. Everything had to go across. And we were helping them track the customers who were basically going to the website for the very first time. A whole set of the customer base who always preferred to use the phone suddenly were, just given a message that the only way of getting anything's on the web. So we're able to track a whole set of folks coming for the very first time. And what was really interesting is then seeing them stick in the channel, because they find, oh, actually, now I know how to use it. It's kind of convenient. And that's the key thing about this, the win-win of reducing cost, also having an upside on, if you get it right, having an upside on sales and retention and value, is because so many customers like the digital approach. And that's the key thing. If you can get really customer centric, you can identify which customers actually like doing everything via a text message and just simply pressing a button and making it easy. It's a whole set of your customer base who like that. Some like the phone. Let's keep the phone for them and get very differentiated in who gets which type of service.
Okay, great. Hey, I have a question from Sid.
Yep.
And, we have a whole range of people on this call from, everywhere from Fortune 500 to smaller companies. And the smaller companies are multitudes larger in size. So the question from Sid is, the problem with analytics for small companies is the sample size tends to be pretty small. Are there any data sources to compare against on various metrics? I don't know if you can speak to that in a general basis, but that seems to be a problem that's probably every small company is facing.
Yeah, no, it's true. It's true. And, for small companies, the value that comes out of automation is just naturally smaller. And small companies won't always invest in, significant dollars for a kind of fully automated system. But that doesn't take away the value of thinking in a journey type way. And so there is actually quite a lot of great research. The folks at Forrester do a great job with kind of research around journey thinking and journey best practices. We do a little bit of that as well at CSG. We have something we call Journey as a Service, where it's essentially a packaged up best practice of a standard sort of journey process. That as long as you're happy with that standard thing, it's kind of very easy to get started, and a lower price option that could fit a smaller business. And we deliberately sort of develop that to appeal to at least the mid-market. It doesn't really scale right the way down to a very small business. So I would go to Forrester for data. They're great on the kind of metrics around value and customer behavior, sort of industry by industry, what the sort of key data points would be.
All right. I'm going to ask just two more questions, and then I want everybody to stick around for Paul and Brent. That's going to be fantastic. I'll let them jump into it. But just some housekeeping stuff. Somebody asked me if the session is recorded and can they watch it later? Absolutely. Don't worry. Once we have them posted, everybody will get an email for that. But Anagra, and sorry for mangling your name, the question is, what would you suggest for a D2C startup? And I assume D2C refers to digital to consumer.
Direct consumer.
Not a super common acronym, but how do they get started around the customer journey right from the start? And before you answer that, I'm just going to add a follow-up from another question, because I kind of wrap it in. And basically, the question seems to ask, how does a company get started if they don't have experts leading the chart? They would need someone like you to explain the process and get them started. So how does that process work? How's the easiest way for them to they know they need it, but they don't know how?
Great, two great questions. They certainly are connected, Bob. You're quite right, but I'll try and tackle them both. So, if you're a startup, D2C startup, rule number one, save every bit of data, right? So as you get going, even though your customer numbers and volumes will be small, save that data as you grow the business, because it's going to be invaluable for an understanding of the journeys. And there's two very interesting sides. Lots of companies will talk to you about journeys these days. It's such a popular theme. The whole experience thing is so popular. There's lots of people with journey solutions. First question to ask them is, can you do two things? One, journey analytics. So that is, take my data and tell me what the journeys are that we see in the customer base. And then two is journey orchestration. So actually make journeys run, actually live connect to different systems and get stuff to happen. Not just analyze it, but actually get it to happen. And, I talked earlier about the need to plan the journeys, and you can do that even as a small startup. You should absolutely do a journey mapping exercise that plans out what are the different steps a customer's going to go through to get to that result, and thinking through that, mapping that out, maybe even interviewing a few customers along the way to feed into that. That will give you the plan, and then you can make sure your systems match that plan. Now, the reason analytics is so important is something I mentioned during the presentation, that all the customers won't do exactly what you plan out. So you need the analytics side to tell you what really happens, and who follows the plan and who doesn't, who does something different, what is that different thing, and how do you accommodate that? So that would be my advice on the sort of startup. In terms of help to get started, it's a great point, an incredibly important point. And again, comes back to the number of people out there offering journey tools. Everybody needs help as well. Best practice is a new discipline. Connecting channels like this in real time is a whole new approach. So you need folks with experience and a consulting and delivering team that can support you. Ultimately, you want your own people running this, but you need someone who's going to help you get there and train and learn a journey way of thinking. Now, of course, I'd say that because CSG can provide that, but it's a key thing to look for. There are experts in the market who can help you get started, and you really should be thinking that way. This is no magic button, easy button, kind of just plug in a black box and everything. There's lots of people that would tell you that, oh, you just plug in our AI engine and it learns everything and it's all fully automated. Yeah, well, but I haven't said what my business goals are or laid out my plan of what I'd like the experience to be. Oh, the black box will learn that and just sort of automatically do it. It's kind of crazy. You need real experience, expertise to sort of do the right thing and go along with great software.
Well, you guys certainly seem to have a lot of success cases with some great metrics. Hey, Mark, I'm going to turn things over because we're at the top of the hour. I want to just request that everybody just stick around for a second, because you don't get to see me anymore, but we're bringing on Brent Leary and Paul Greenberg, and many of you people know them as not only chairs of our conference, CRM Evolution, but they're on everyone's list of most influential people in CRM. So this is really a treat, and I really thank them. So you don't have to do anything, just stick around. And now I'm going to welcome Brent and Paul. Can you guys come on screen?
Hey, Bob. Hey, Mark.
Hey,
guys.
hey.
All right, take it away, guys.
Okay. Well, as Bob said, I'm Brent Leary.
I'm Paul Greenberg.
Now we usually do a weekly show called the CRM Players, where we get to talk to really influential people in the industry doing really great stuff. And so we thought we would just treat the next 15 minutes like it's a part of our show. And so, Mark, part of our show means looking for every way possible to make fun of the guests we have. So you might just want to be on the lookout for that.
Okay, I'm ready.
All right. Well, actually, we'll start by not making fun of you because we'll get there. Don't worry. So what we're going to do is we obviously have some questions for you. And if anyone has questions from the audience, just put it in Q&A and we'll get to them as best we can, given we have about 12, 13 minutes here. So, but I want to start. I want to start with one that really struck me interesting about just CSG, really. I mean, I took a look at the portfolio of CSG and it is insanely huge. I mean, you have 42 different offerings in that portfolio, and they range from, very administrative kind of offerings, including, I think one was for bill paying or something like that. And another one for field service. You, of course, had journey orchestration, journey analytics, et cetera.
Yep.
Just widely diverse. Yet, if you're looking at core messages, you're talking about CX and EX, total experience. And you're also talking about customer engagement as in a big way. And, when CSG acquired Kitewheel, that was one of the reasons they did so months ago. Can you kind of take that engagement CX, EX theme and kind of explain the diversity of that portfolio?
Sure. I could try. Paul.
And
so
good luck to you, right?
Yeah. So CSG, and you're quite right. I came from Kitewheel, set Kitewheel up 9 years ago, and we were acquired by CSG last summer. We, after years of actually been big partners with them. CSG is a 40-year-old business that got started in the customer care and billing area for mostly the large cable operators in the US. So it's pretty well known that CSG's top customers are Comcast, Charter, Cox, Dish, all of the big kind of cable satellite companies who use us for a whole range of things, starting with calculating and sending the bill and making sure that's correct. And then all the customer care and CRM kind of functions around that. And so they've got 40 years in taking care of customers. It's one of my internal joke phrases that I use a lot is the bill is it's the one piece of direct mail that always gets opened by the customer. And so, it's funny, the reason that Kitewheel, I think, was such a good fit with CSG is CSG has been helping customers around that life cycle that I showed, that whole servicing, growth, retention, excellence in customer care. They've been doing that in the cable and telco industry for 40 years now. About 15 years ago, the business started to diversify and started a customer engagement division. And that's where the work all takes place with the financial services, insurance, retail, healthcare clients. And that's actually the division that we're in. Our solutions overlay on the telco industry, obviously, as well. But the business really has three big divisions, and we're in that customer experience division. But we have a set of solutions as well, which include field service management. I mean, I actually think it's a great example that's got a lot of applicability. It all started its life in, if you're a customer of a cable company, you need the cable installed and the box delivered and updated and fixed sometimes and so on. And so there's a team of roving technicians who go around and do visits to the house. Now, in the new world, our solution for that is almost kind of like a mobile phone Uber app, where all of a sudden, instead of your appointment being, sometime in the morning on April 27th, it's a much more precise time. And in the time leading up to it, you get a little map that shows where the technician is on their way. And you get to text them and say, actually, I'm out of the shops and I'll only be back in 10 minutes. It looks like you're going to be there just before me. Don't worry, I'm on my way. And just like you do with an Uber driver, that same kind of approach. And of course, that's a journey. That's a set of communications that connect and help the customer have a better interaction. And of course, it's an interaction with the employee, who's also empowered with that same app to communicate back to the customer. And so that, it's funny, we're seeing that applied in all sorts of other industries. I had an incredibly interesting call. It's funny, you probably are both aware of how much CX is a huge theme in the healthcare industry these days. And I was on a call with a leading head of innovation at a big hospital chain a couple of weeks ago, who were saying, it's very frustrating. They have, in a similar way, they have a network of nurses and physicians now who do a lot of home visits, again, driven by COVID. So much of that industry is moving to either remote care or in-home care. And so this doctor was saying to me, when I order my Friday evening Thai takeaway, I order it on my mobile phone, I pay for it instantly, and I track its every step until it's delivered at my house. I've got 10,000 nurses out on the roads. I don't know where any of them are. The patients don't know where any of them are. They don't know what time they're going to arrive. It's crazy. This, the way technology has been able to race for those small businesses, but it's so difficult to implement at scale in a big business. And so, but would be so valuable to do that live interaction. It's so convenient for customers, patients, to know exactly what's happening, exactly how you get through. And hospitals are doing a lot of this, kiosks to guide you through the complex facility, to take away the human interaction a little bit. Again, safety kind of measure that you're guided electronically on your visit. So lots of interesting journey stuff happening there.
I want to pick up on something you mentioned very early on in your presentation, kind of segue into what you just talked about, how, everybody's been talking about CX, and it's been, on top of mind for at least a couple of years, but then all of a sudden EX has really come up and people are really focused on that. And then there's a lot of people who are saying that there's a direct correlation. If you improve EX, then you will improve CX. There's a number of people, almost sort of like 50-50, what I'm hearing is saying, well, there is no real direct correlation. That's just, people saying things that sound like happy talk. Tell us where you are with that. How direct a correlation is it for EX and CX? And what are your customers saying about that?
Yeah, it's funny. It's a great point, because I do think most of the opinion about this stuff in the market is sort of just it's assumed that it makes sense, right? It's assumed that, oh yeah, of course, a happy employee is going to make a happy interaction and will make a happy customer. And there's a direct link. But I actually think there's very limited, real solid data for that. And the reason for that is because so much of that data is captured in a kind of siloed way, and the tools are not widespread enough. We're trying our best, but they're not widespread enough yet to properly connect it and make the real correlations between and so we see this all the time with voice of the customer feedback, and to be honest, the biggest problem in matching CX and EX is there's not enough voice of employee feedback collected by companies. They're much more collecting the customer feedback. But even when they do that, it's so tied to a particular channel or a particular event, and is never viewed in the bigger context. So, you could be annoyed at a company for all sorts of things that have just happened to you. and your next phone call with them, you get a survey and you give them a really bad score. It's nothing to do with that interaction really with that agent. It's all to do with you being really cheesed off at what's happened over the previous. And if you get your journey analytics right, you overlay the survey responses in the context of the whole journey, and you can suddenly start seeing, you know what always happens before bad service is these 2 or 3 things happen in other channels, and maybe they're the real drivers of this. Now, what's needed is more employee overlay. We tend to collect a lot of employee feedback more in terms of the actions they take and their feedback on the customer and what they did to the customer, and stripping that from the operational systems, more than it is a survey of, are you a happy employee? Sadly, many businesses measure that in attrition rates, which is all a little bit after. That's a lagging indicator of your employee satisfaction to track your churn rate. So, you know, you're onto a real important thing here, that there's a lot more data and research needed on that employee side. It's such a new thing, I think, primarily, and it makes a lot of common sense, but there's work needed to really fill out the data behind it, if you like. So
we do have one very particular question from the audience, meaning it's very specific. To implement this is from Sergio Cordero.
Yep.
He says, to implement voice recognition with artificial intelligence, we've encountered difficulties in sizing the costs that providers could charge. What advice can you give us for this sizing?
Well, it's true. It's funny. We see there's really 3 modes that we see being kind of delivered and available in this market. The sort of 2 extremes and very little in the middle. We happen to sit in the middle, but the 2 extremes, there's very simple kind of rules-based chatbot type AI that isn't really a language interface. It's basically giving a tree of choices, and the customer picks a button and it sort of learns and moves. Most people involved in the voice-based stuff, exactly as Sergio says, it's incredibly expensive exercises, 30 to 50 developers working on trying to classify language and intent and meaning, and oftentimes, in fact, the first case study I covered today, that organization had a team of 50 of their own engineers trying to do this. Wow. And trying to do this for over a year. And then they discovered us. And so our solution has a natural language processing engine at the heart. So that's the AI tool. But what CSG has is all of the voice, IVR, and text processing expertise from our history that kind of wraps around it. And it's the speed with which using the right AI engine to do true natural language processing can be so much more effective than those big teams of more human powered, even though they're using algorithmic approaches. They're doing this kind of classification activity that is often, for true language-based stuff, incredibly expensive. And so, Sergio, my advice would be, you've got to seek out that sort of hotspot in the middle, where there's 2 or 3 natural language processing kind of AI approaches that can get you a fast solution without all of the intense and very costly effort from the programming team.
Wow, that was great. That 15 minutes really went by fast.
I know.
Lots of good
well,
stuff
we
there.
we do really should ask him that one final
Okay.
question, even though we kind of know the answer.
I think I might, because I see on his LinkedIn account he's in the Boston area.
Oh,
This is not looking good.
you're in
but
trouble.
we'll ask it anyway.
You are in trouble.
So traditionally at the end of our show, after a really great conversation we've had with a guest, we have to ask them one final question, and that determines whether we'll ever talk to them again. All right. So, do you have a favorite NFL football team?
Well, how long have we got? So I
Not
arrived in Boston 23 years ago. All right.
Okay.
Do you know who else
Oh.
arrived in Boston 23 years ago?
Tom Brady.
All right.
Oh,
So I arrived
27.
from the UK, Scotland, big rugby fan, thought American football was a crazy idea.
Oh boy, he's in.
And I started to watch and saw that whole thing, Brady's first year with the whole Drew Bledsoe interplay and the injuries and would he play him, would he not play him? And he played him and everybody was biting their nails and they won the Super Bowl. And I've
Yeah, I
been
remember that part.
devoted ever since.
Oh, well, if you remember who they played in that Super Bowl, it was
The first one was
the Los Angeles Rams, which is my favorite team, which is why it's been great talking with you right now, Mark, but we'll probably never talk again.
Yeah, never again. There's only one thing. Look, aside from Brenda and I doing the show for 12 years, one of the common themes that founded the show was our utter disdain and hatred for the Patriots.
You're not alone, guys. You're not alone. I'm used to these conversations.
Yeah, but we actually put permabans on people who root for them.
And we were thinking about having you on our, the full show, but
well,
sorry.
Would it help to say that I've over the last couple of years kind of become a Tampa Bay fan?
Well, it would ease things, but you're kind of really skirting the issue there. Yeah, and also it's not all that believable.
it helps a little bit because my Rams did beat Tampa Bay last year, so
yeah, I was going to say I do know who the Super Bowl champs are.
And one of the guests, one of the attendees, literally writes "Go Eagles," and I'm a Giants fan, so
yeah,
yes,
that's not helping.
You're never going to be on the CRM plays either.
That was your producer, Paul.
Oh, you're right. It does say Bill. I didn't pay any attention. I just saw "Go Eagles." Sorry, Bill.
All right, guys. Does anybody want to?
Yeah, I'm sorry too.
Can we tell the winner of the $50 Amazon gift card?
Sure. So
Brent Leary, thank you.
Is William Wong. And William, if you're here, I have no idea how you communicate to get it, but Bob, what do they got to do?
Nothing. I will take care of it.
Okay. Well, William, congratulations. You are a lucky man.
And I'd like to thank everyone that joined us today, especially Mark Smith and CSG, but not entirely. Brett Leary and Paul Greenberg, you guys are the best. Thanks so much for joining Mark and us and entertaining our audience. They really needed you guys over the last 2 years, all three of you. So thanks so much for coming, everyone. We've got another webcast with Zendesk scheduled for 2 p.m. Don't worry, you'll receive an email for that. Just have to mention that. Mark, thanks so much and good luck.
Thank you, Bob. Thanks for inviting me. It was a pleasure. Nice to meet everyone. Great job, guys. Thanks for the questions.